What is up, Janksters? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and today Wizards of the Coast bestowed upon us a first look at Phyrexia All Will Be One. Now, they confirmed a number of details about the product, which we might talk a little bit about, but really today what I want to dive into are the cards that they've spoiled. Now, this is not full-on spoiler season. We're just looking at a handful of cards. This is a little teaser, a taste test, if you will, to let us know about what's coming and to get us excited. And, well, it worked, at least for me. And they gave us a couple of really big hitters, and I'm definitely going to start with those because, my goodness, there are some bombs that we can expect to see coming out of, Phyrexia, and, well, here we are. So let's just jump right on in. The first one is Elesh Norn, Mother of Machines. She is a 4/7 Phyrexian Praetor for 4 and a white, with vigilance. So we have a 4/7. She's a 4/7 vigilance for 4 and a white. That alone is already worth the price of admission, but wait, there's more. If a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Permanents entering the battlefield don't cause abilities of permanents your opponents control to trigger. So the wording on this is awesome in a lot of ways. So it gives you kind of a Panharmonicon style effect where it doubles all your ETB triggers. Like, that's incredible on its face. Something as simple as a Resolute Reinforcements, which is just a 1/1 that creates another 1/1. Well, now all of a sudden you're getting 3 1/1s instead of 2. That's fantastic. It's nice little perk. You also have situations where you have cards like Borrowed Time or Brutal Cathar or Portal to Phyrexia, where when they enter the battlefield, your opponent, you're removing your opponent's permanence in one way or another. All of a sudden, it doubles that. If you have Elesh Norn down and then you stick a Portal to Phyrexia, your opponent has to sacrifice 6 creatures. That is savage. And Portal to Phyrexia was bad enough on its own. Like, it didn't need the help, and here we are. But flip side, Brutal Cathar exiles 2 things, Borrowed Time exiles 2 things, Circle of Confinement exiles 2 things. You get the idea. And they're 2 separate triggers as well. So if your opponent does have a way to counter one of the triggers, the other one still goes off. So that's pretty fantastic. The other thing, the Stifle effect, or the Hoser effect. Permanents entering the battlefield don't cause abilities of permanents your opponents control to trigger. So if your opponent plays something like a Borrowed Time or a Brutal Cathar trying to remove your stuff, it just doesn't trigger. Additionally, if they have some kind of card that says when X enters the battlefield, like Sarenth Greatworm, for example, says whenever a non-basic land, it's just whenever a land enters the battlefield, create a Power Stone token. Well, it counts your opponent's lands. Well, if Elesh Norn's down, it doesn't work. That ability doesn't count even if I play the land. It's a permanent entering. It would cause a trigger that they control. Therefore, it doesn't go off. So I think this card is absolutely insane. I think it's phenomenal. I think we're going to see a ton of people building around it, on day one. And the biggest reason for that is just the efficiency. Like I said, for 5 mana, a 4/7 Vigilance is already worth the price of admission. Now, Vigilance is really, really key right now. One of the important pieces of removal that a lot of people are running is the Wandering Emperor. Well, the biggest value that the Wandering Emperor has is the ability to exile attackers. It's they can't if the attacker isn't tapped. So that makes a huge difference. So Vigilance is a big deal right now. And I think Elesh Norn is well positioned to just be an absolute house. And there are a lot of really powerful ETB effects that are running around out there. Even a lot of which are getting played. Even something as simple as Spirited Companion or Resolute Reinforcements, like I mentioned. Elesh Norn is a 2 of in a lot of decks that otherwise don't care. Is very possible. And I could also see a deck running 4 of, easily. Also, commander players are going to want to get their hands on this. Even if their commander, even if they don't necessarily want Elesh Norn as the commander, having an additional Panharmonicon in a deck that can support white, that's something you want. And if you can hose 3 additional people rather than just 1 with that hose ability, this card's insane. Also, it does fit the pattern that we've seen with recent Praetors, going all the way back to Vorinclex in Kaldheim, where they have this like effect where they buff you and hate on your opponent with kind of like mirroring abilities, and so this is a natural progression to that. Very strong, very strong. We're gonna see a lot of this card. Speaking of very strong cards, they are reprinting Phyrexian Obliterator into Standard. It's happening. It's here. I cannot believe they're willing to do this. This card is savage. It is also one of the least new player-friendly cards I have ever seen. The reason I say that is it will blow somebody out. I guarantee you, if you have not read this card very, very carefully, it will blow you out and it will make you feel awful. It just will. Because it's one of those cards where if you're not sure how it works, playing around it is very, 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 very difficult and not particularly intuitive. But so here's what it does. It's a 5/5 trampler for 4. Now, that 4 is all black mana. Black, 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 black. 5/5 trampler. 5/5 trampler for 4. Good value if you can cast it. Whenever a source deals damage to Phyrexian Obliterator, that source's controller sacrifices that many permanents. Note, it doesn't say non-land. So if your opponent so if you attack with a Phyrexian Obliterator and your opponent doesn't know how it works and they block with their 10/10 Rust Goliath, well, Rust Goliath blasts the Obliterator for 10. Yeah, Obliterator dies, but they have to sacrifice 10 permanents as a result of doing that. Like, their board's gone. It's over. Like, this thing's insane. And yeah, and it's here. It's back. I'm excited to get a chance to brew around it because it has a very unique effect that is difficult to really take advantage of. One thing, a deck that I've tried to build in Historic, because you may recognize, like, this may sound familiar, Phyrexian Obliterator is a card that is currently on Arena, special thanks to Historic Anthologies, so this might look a little more familiar. But it is a very potent card, very powerful, but right now on Arena, it's only available in Historic and Historic Brawl. Those are the only formats where it's a legal card. I tried doing a Golgari deck using Phyrexian Obliterator and a bunch of fight spells. Specifically fight spells, because with fight spells, my creature deals damage equal to its power to your thing, and your thing deals damage equal to its power to my thing, whether you want it to or not. So if you have a Rust Goliath sitting down there and I attack, you don't block. All right, fine, I'm going to smack you in the face for 5 because of the Phyrexian Obliterator damage, and then I'm going to have it fight your Goliath anyway. You know, that is a move that you can do to really blow your opponent out. Very strong. Now, in my experience, in Historic, I wasn't quite able to find a build that really worked with it. However, I'm going to be able to do that in Standard now, and we have some good fight spells out there, so I'm excited for that possibility. I'm definitely going to give it a shot and see if we can make it work. You may think, wait a minute, that's at least 2 colors. That's true, but we're living in a Standard where Grixis is casting Invoke Despair. You know, we have full 3-color decks that are casting 4 pipped spells right now. So as long as the deck is primarily black with a heavy black mana base, I'm not worried. I think it'll be fine. All right, next up. Oh, that's the new Phyrexian Obliterator. Oh, next up we have Koth, Fire of Resistance. Now, I am not a particularly huge Vorthos. I do not follow the Magic story as closely as I would like to. However, I was aware that the last time we were on what is now Phyrexia, what was then called New Phyrexia, there was this planeswalker called Koth, who was one of the leaders of the Resistances, and he actually worked very closely with Elspeth, who you might know, just a very popular planeswalker who's seen a lot of printings, you know, in the last couple of years in various sets. But so she and Koth worked closely together in an attempt to actually kill the Praetors, which kind of went sideways, and a bunch of stuff happened. And I believe that was the last time we had seen Koth, and it was in the middle of a battle as Elspeth planeswalked out. And honestly, for the last, I don't know, like 6, 7, 8 years, however long it's been, we genuinely didn't know if Koth was even alive because we haven't seen him. And, you know, like, to be honest, after having read that story, I just assumed he got completely wrecked. But apparently he got out somehow, and here he is, Koth, Fire of Resistance. And it's funny, too, when in the first look stream where they spoiled these cards, so I'm gonna paint a picture for you. I was driving home from work. Part of the reason this video is out so late is because I had to work today. So I was driving home from work and I was listening to the stream. I wasn't able to actually catch it when it went live. So I was just listening while I was driving. I wasn't looking at the video. And they had commented on planeswalkers, you know, there being a number of planeswalkers in the set, and that some of them would be completed. And I was like, oh no. And the final numbers, by the way, there are 10 total planeswalkers in Phyrexia will be 1, and 5 of them are completed. They are the bad guys. They have confirmed like the characters, but we don't know which are completed yet. But so when they mentioned Koth's name, they said Koth, Fire of Resistance. Here I am, country road. It's pitch dark. I'm driving home from work. I actually pumped my fist. I was like, yes! I was just so excited that Koth is alive. He is not completed. He has not been taken over from Phyrexia. He is fighting the good fight. He's still doing it. That made me super happy. Like, and to be honest, actually, I haven't even read the freaking card. Like, just the fact that he's here and he's okay is so cool. But anyway, so what does Koth do? Koth is a red planeswalker, 2 red for a starting loyalty 4. +2, search your library for a basic mountain card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Okay, make sure I hit my land drops. Red likes doing that, especially if you're in like big stompy red. That's actually really nice. And then -3, Koth Fire of Resistance deals damage to target creature equal to the number of mountains you control. So we want to be in mono and we want to just be blasting people. I like it. I can live with that. -7, you get an emblem with whenever a mountain enters the battlefield under your control, this emblem deals 4 damage to any target. 4 damage is a lot. The gold standard for targeted damage is 3. Based on lightning bolt. So the fact that this is 4 and it's any target, you can go face with this. So if you can also stick Valakut on the field, your opponent is hosed. Also, as far as the emblem is concerned, it doesn't care about basic mountains. Now the +2 can only grab basic mountains, okay? But the -3 and the -7 doesn't say basic. It's just mountains. Whenever you're playing with mountains, go to town. You're gonna have some fun. So this actually opens up a potential like mono red archetype that we don't currently have, because right now the mono red deck that you're currently facing on the ladder that you see from time to time running Kumana faces Kakazan, Swift Spear, that kind of stuff, Phoenix Chicks, they want to go low to the ground and they want to use burn to remove blockers and get in for as much damage as possible. A 4-mana planeswalker does not fit. Like, it just doesn't. It's too late, it's too slow. No matter how much value you might be able to get off this, you want to be winning the game before you would be playing 4 drops in that deck. You just do. So we would have to build something else for Koth. And I'm intrigued at the possibilities for sure. Also in Explorer, especially with Explorer anthologies having just come out, introducing Nykthos to the format, I was actually already planning on doing a mono red devotion deck. Koth actually could slot in nicely into that when he shows up. So that's pretty cool. Also keep in mind, we're talking about standard cards here, but they will be they will be legal in Historic, Explorer, and Pioneer. That's actually something I didn't mention with Phyrexian Obliterator. It is being printed into standard, which means it will also be legal in Pioneer for the first time. So it's going to be in Explorer too. Like right now we have it in Historic on Arena, but we don't have it in Explorer. Well, that'll change once Phyrexia All-Will-Be-One comes out. Anyway. But yeah, so Koth, Fire of Resistance. Cool for big red. If you got a lot of mountains, let's go, baby. I'm digging it. Next up, we have the first previewed of what will be a cycle. Every color is going to get one of these. This is Blue Sun's Twilight. This is a sorcery for X blue. Gain control of target creature with mana value X or less. If X is 5 or more, create a token that's a copy of that creature. I kind of love this, because not only are you stealing your opponent's biggest thing, you do have to invest a lot of mana into it, but you're stealing your opponent's biggest thing and then you're getting a free copy. Well, not free, you're paying for it, because you have to pay a lot. But if you're targeting a 5-drop, like if you're targeting, say, a Silverback Elder or a Titan of Industry, a creature that's just big anyway, you just get another one. That's just neat. I like that. Keep in mind, the token is legendary if the original card is legendary. So be aware of that. That is a factor. So if you steal your opponent's Sheoldred, which to be honest is probably still a very good use for this card, but even if you were to pay additional mana, you will not get the copy of Sheoldred. That said, if your opponent has a good 3-drop, for example, that is not legendary, say something like a Brutal Cathar or like the Reflection of Kiki Jiki, which is not legendary, you can pay 5, or you can pay 7 mana into this, even though you're targeting a 3-drop, and you will get it and copy it. So that's pretty darn cool. I have a feeling this card is going to be really, really good in Limited, because Limited is often a game of the, you know, whoever gets the biggest creature online and keeps it around. That is often how games of Limited kind of narrow down and how they kind of resolve themselves. Not in every format, but a lot of the time you can kind of count on that. And this being able to steal your opponent's, if your opponent has the big thing, just take it. And you may get 2 for your trouble. Like, that's fantastic. In Constructed, I don't see this being particularly useful, but at the same time, this is going to be that card that you see once in 20 games, maybe 30 games, but when you see it, it is going to blow you out, and it's going to feel awful. But yeah, I'm already, actually, you know what? I'm calling it now. This is the card that I see like 1 out of every dozen games or 20 games, and I get completely blown out. But when I try to build around it, it never works. Like, so if you want, come out onto my stream, twitch.tv/handbox42, link in the description below, to come watch me get frustrated that this isn't working for me. Because that's the kind of vibe I get. Now, the thing I find very interesting here, this is Blue Sun's Twilight. On Phyrexia, which was previously mirrodin, there are 5 separate suns, 1 for each color of mana. And you may this may sound kind of familiar from the Zenith cycle. You know, there's Red Sun Zenith, Green Sun Zenith, Blue Sun Zenith, etc. Well, they're doing something similar here where they're giving each sun a Twilight, which is kind of fun. And so this is the blue one. We haven't seen the other 4 yet, but I'm excited to see what they do. Because gaining control of stuff is very much within Blue's wheelhouse, and it's one of those effects that you just don't see very often, but man, when it works, it's great. Next up, we have Kadeen, first Goldwarden, which is quite the mouthful. Not gonna lie, there are a lot of syllables in that name. But so who is Kadeen? Kadeen is a human rebel, 2/2 for red, white with trample. I love small creatures with trample. It really makes me happy. Usually that means they're not going to stay small for long. Whenever Kadeen, first Goldwarden, attacks, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of equipped creatures you control. Then, if Kadeen's power is 4 or greater, draw a card. So this looks to me like a really good equipment commander that is a great payoff, because at the end of the day, if you're loading your team up, we want to be drawing cards. So great, card advantage on a legendary creature that usually screams commander, in my opinion, because if you can get card advantage coming out of the command zone, you're doing the thing. Yeah, and Boros is a color that kind of historically struggles with that. Also, you'll notice the trigger on the draw cards only cares if Jor's power is 4 or greater. You could just equip a Bone Splitter to Jor, attack, and draw a card. Like, you don't have to have other equipped creatures and to get advantage of that ability. If you do have other equipped creatures, bonus, that's always good. So I think this is a card that isn't really going to make any waves in Standard unless Phyrexia brings with it a ton of really good equipment. Now, this is a little bit of a signpost, a little bit of a clue that that's going to happen. Or at least they're going to try, because mirrodin, Phyrexia, is where equipment began. Back in 2003, the very first equipment were printed in the set just named Mirrodin. And the plane of Mirrodin ended up getting overrun by the Phyrexians, and it is now Phyrexia. So your Bone Splitters, your Lightning Greaves, like those classic equipment that just made equipment. A lot of which, to be honest, were pretty busted. Like there were a lot that were just way too good. So like, are we going to see a Bone Splitter or Lightning Greaves reprint in this set? Probably not. I don't think we'd ever see those get printed back into Standard, but a boy can dream, right? But I think Kadeen is interesting. It's very possible that this is going to be indicative of some cool equipment coming. It also is possible that we're still not going to see much equipment, and Kadeen and Astor can just hang out in our collections and be sad that there isn't a good equipment deck. They'll be in good company, though, because in past Standard, we had Nahiri and Akiri, who were both just really great equipment payoffs, just kind of chilling, not really doing anything. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's where Kadeen ends up. But all the same, the difference between Kadeen and Astor and Nahiri and whatnot before them is Astor only costs 2. Like, Astor's just super cheap. Like, if you want like a decently statted human that could potentially draw you cards if you have like Anthem effects and stuff, Kadeen could do the job. Like, it's actually not bad. It is just a decent card, even if you're not leaning into the equipment synergy. So that's nice. All right, and finally, the last one that I want to talk about today, Slobad Iron Goblin. Now, if you're a fan of the YouTube creator Spice8Rack, which I certainly am, dude's amazing. He has this love for goblins in, specifically Slobad. He has cited Slobad as like one of his favorite, characters in MTG of all time. And I think it's with good reason. Slobad is, in the original Mirrodin novels, which, to be honest, I never finished. I read the first 2 and was like, okay, I'll get to the 3rd sometime. That was 20 years ago. So, but in the original, Mirrodin novels, Glissa was the protagonist. The name Glissa might sound familiar because she was completed actually in our last trip to New Phyrexia. But Glissa was the protagonist, the hero that was trying to solve it all, and her plucky sidekick was Slobad, the Goblin Artificer, and he was this quirky character who was just so lovable. Like, it was one of those things, like, I loved having him around. He was the kind of guy I just wanted to hang out with, and he ended up, the whole story ended up with, as I recall, with him sacrificing himself to make the final MacGuffin things all line up. Well, I didn't read the last book, I'm sorry, but in any event, Slobad had this really great character sacrifice death moment. And so the fact that the Phyrexians have taken Slobad's remains, I assume, and kind of revived him into this Phyrexian monster is really upsetting. But at the same time, that's totally their MO. It's what they do. And so, of course, they're going to mess with our favorite characters. This is part of the deal. And so Slobad Iron Golem here is that, just incarnate. It's everybody's favorite little goblin friend, having been completely corrupted and overrun by this evil force in the Phyrexians. Really heartbreaking stuff. But, story aside, what does the card do? It is a 3/3 Phyrexian Goblin Artificer for 2 and a red. Tap, sack an artifact at an amount of red mana equal to the sacrificed artifact's mana value. Spend this mana only to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts. Now, I am currently rocking a commander deck that I absolutely adore based on Megatron. Megatron is a Mardu commander that is doing something very, very, very similar to this. Because in that deck, you sacrifice artifacts to deal damage. Excess damage spills over to the opponents. And then on the post-combat main phase, you get mana, in that case generic mana, equal to the damage dealt to opponents. So you're doing something similar where you're sacrificing artifacts, potentially getting removal triggers, and then in this case, you're just getting the mana straight away. You're kind of skipping some steps. And then you can use that red mana to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts. So there are certain cards like Spine of Ishsa, which is a 7-drop artifact. When it hits the battlefield, you destroy target permanent, and when it goes to your graveyard, you put it back in your hand. So in that case, you just like pay 7, drop it, blow something up, tap Slobad, sack it, get 7 mana, it goes back to your hand, you just cast it again. Blow another thing up. And then next turn, like Slobad's locked and loaded, you just do it again. If you have anything that can untap Slobad, get out of here. You're gonna you just blow up the whole board. It's insane. So I feel like this card has some cool combo potential, and it can be very, very strong. Absolutely. But you really need a combo around it. That said, it's a 3/3. And it is a Phyrexian Goblin Artificer, which are 3 types. Like Goblin is the only type that's like really well supported, and just a generic 3/3 with some artifact synergies you don't really want to put in most Goblin decks. If you want to build something a little funky, then maybe Slobad could work. But generally speaking, actually now that I look at it, I'm kind of getting Kark Clan Ironworks vibes from this guy. That's actually kind of cool. So anyway, I think the card is interesting. I think it has a lot of cool potential, and it encourages you to use cards that have like graveyard synergies, like cards that when they go to the graveyard you get bonuses. Even cards as simple as Ichor Wellspring, like it enters the battlefield to draw a card. You tap Slobad, sack it, you draw a card and get 2 mana back. All right, cool, and then you can do some more stuff with that. Solemn Simulacrum is another good one. You know, just sack it, draw cards. Let's go. Nothing wrong with that. So I like Slobad. I think the card is actually really, really good. I hate what they did to our boy, but at the same time, knowing that there will be 5 planeswalkers completed in this set and that we're just getting started, we are going to see a lot of our childhoods and a lot of our fond memories of Magic be corrupted by this evil force. So that is something that we are going to have to strap in for as we learn more about this set. Going to be part of the deal. They did also preview artwork for Venser, so if you have fond memories of Venser, I'm sorry. Yeah, they've been completed, and yeah, it's going to be some heartbreaking stuff for sure. That said, I'm going to soapbox for just a second, and if you made it this far into the video, thank you. You rock. I hope none of this gets undone. As much as I want Slobad to be able to rest peacefully and be saved from Phyrexia, and I do want that as a fan, and as much as it hurt to see Ajani and Tamiyo taken over from Phyrexia, as a storyteller in my own right, or at least an aspiring one, I hope they don't retcon this. I hope that this is meaningful and it has a deep, lasting impact on the story. Like Tamiyo and Ajani, like it hurts to see those characters that we love and that we've trusted be turned to the dark side. Absolutely. But I will be genuinely disappointed as a fan of narrative and as a fan of fiction if they find a way to just cure it. If they find a way to undo it or go back in time and reverse it so that they were never completed to begin with, or do some kind of shenanigans to make everything okay again, I'll be very disappointed if they go through a dramatic moment where these characters who've been completed have to be killed, as a way of eliminating threats because they're on the opposite side. Then yeah, that's okay. Like it's gonna suck, don't get me wrong, but we enjoy stories, we enjoy fiction, we enjoy these worlds so that we can feel stuff. And when you're dealing with a world-altering, world-ending force like the Phyrexians, you're going to feel sorrow, you're going to feel anguish. If you don't, the writers and the creative team screwed it up. So I gotta say, huge props to the WotC creative team for what they've done so far. Because here we've seen, what, 7 cards? And I've seen one that made me legitimately fist pump and shout in triumphant exaltations. And I saw another one that just completely broke my heart. So that's actually pretty cool. Like, I love it. So, Phyrexia LV1 looks like it's a banger set. I cannot wait to get my hands on it. This has been, like, this first look, I'm in. It's that simple. So, Wizards, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you at home for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Do all the YouTube things. They all help out. Yeah, and I'll catch you on the next one.